Hey, folks, Dustin Zarni here, Democratic Elections Commissioner for Onondaga County in New York, and welcome back to Commissioner in the Car. I'm back on my Sunday timeline. Today is Sunday, February 22nd, and this episode is Petition Season Begins. So we are 121 days away from the June primary, 254 days until the midterm election. And this episode is going to be about petition season starting on Tuesday. I did a little change up. I was thinking I was going to do a refutation of the SAVE Act, but I'm going to save that till next week because this is important. The start of our election season really begins on Tuesday, and I'll go into that in a minute. But as always, let's check in at what the Board of Elections has done this week. This last week was our what we call our enrollment week. So on February 20th, that was Friday, we posted our signature requirements for our February poll, and this is a legally statutorily required event. What we do is we use our signature requirements to determine the minimum signatures needed to run for office during the designating and independent nominating petitions that are coming up over the next few months. And we had to be totally caught up on registration, which we were, and process all of the voter party changes, which we did. That was done. AVR, the automatic voter registration, kind of did a soft launch. I say that because the New York State Board is kind of in charge of that, and there was a little hiccups. So we didn't get all of the data this week. We've been promised that the data is going to be coming on Monday. It might be a week's worth of registration data, but we'll get to it. We'll catch up. We're ready. So we'll get that done. So that's what we did at the Board of Elections. We also processed what's called our NCOA, National Change of Address, where we changed the address for all the people that registered to change their address through the post office and other places. That was done this last week as well. That moved a lot of people around. So we're we really feel very confident about our voter rolls of what is under our control. It's pretty accurate going into the beginning of petition season, which is Tuesday. And that's what we're doing in this episode is we're talking about designating petitions and what they are. So on Tuesday, February 24th, is the beginning of the designating petition season here in New York. That's all over New York, not just Onondaga County. Designating petitions are the basic building block of ballot access in New York. It is one of the few things that is universal throughout all of New York State. In fact, almost every office that will be on the ballot this November will use designating petitions as their primary ballot access. We talked about state conventions last week, and the statewide offices have a different path. But if they, there are some of those officers that are trying to do designating petitions because they didn't get their 25% at their state convention. But the rest of us have to do these designating petitions. And a designating petition is basically going around to the voters enrolled inside of a party and asking them to endorse a candidacy for the purposes of getting on the ballot. So if, New York says that if you want to get on the ballot in New York, you have to go get at least 5% of the enrolled voters inside the political subdivision that you're running for, enrolled in the party that you're running on, to get on the ballot. Now there are some breaks. If you're in a county ledge or city council seat, it can't be more than 500 minimum signatures. If you're running citywide, it can't be more than 1,000 signatures. If you're running congressional ride, it can't be more than 1,250 signatures. And if you're running for state senate, I believe that is 1,000 as well. And if you're running for a countywide, it's 2,000. So those are the breaks. So if your minimum number, if that 5% calculation goes over those breaks in those political races, then you get a break at that. So it's very important that we know what those minimum signatures are, and we do because we did the calculations, and we put them on our website at onvote.net under candidate information. And, they're not really much different, than they have been in the past. There hasn't been a large amount of change in registration, since last year when, most of these races, town races, county ledge races, ran. And again, a lot of these places are hitting those minimum breaks. You may notice on the signature requirement some TBDs on there. That's because those are races like the state senate races and two of our New York Assembly races and the congressional race that goes over county lines. When a race goes over a county line, it's up to the state board to set those minimums. They did do that, but they didn't publish that until after 5 o'clock on Friday. So we left at 4:30, so we didn't have bipartisan approval to alter the document that is already up on the website. We'll be doing that early Monday morning. But for both state senate districts, it's 1,000 for the Democrats, 1,250 for the congressionals, and 500 for the assembly seats. So those signature requirements were published on Friday. So the question is, why do we petition to get on the ballot instead of using other methods? Well, that's a question I ask a lot. It's not, the true answer is it's because that's the way we've always done it. The other part of that true answer is that that's the way, what the law requires it to do. So who would change that? That would be the New York legislature. So your assembly and Senate people that are running, they have an ability to change that ballot access and give other options, but they have yet to even really entertain doing so. Both the bipartisan, both the Republicans and Democrats of the elections commissioners across the state have endorsed other methods of getting on the ballot, but the legislature has not done so. The easiest thing is that we would like the county parties to have the same access as the state parties for getting direct access for their nominees that have over 25%. This would allow challengers to be able to still get on the ballot without having to get petitions, and also the people who win the designations, but also allow a path for people who don't get that 25% to get on the ballot by going out and doing petitions when there's nobody out there, soaking up these petitions as well. So we believe that's the right way to go, but it's not the law today, and it won't be the law this year. So hopefully the legislature will entertain this for future seasons, because you can't really see out my windows, but there's a lot of snow going on. And in fact, the whole southern part of the state is about to get 13 inches of snow on Monday, which is the start of the petition season. So, it's a lot harder to go out and get signatures when the white stuff is on the ground. And when the calendar changed to move the primary to June, which is a good thing, because it's good for voters, and that's the most important thing. But it's bad for candidates who try to get on the ballot, because it moved the petition season from June back to June. It used to be in June when it was a September primary. Now the petition season is where it is, last week of February to the first week of April. So we would love to get that changed, but it's not changed as of now. And so The other important thing to know about designating petitions is this is how primaries begin. People may ask, there's a lot of people out there announcing that they're going to primary. I want to make sure that I'm very clear about my personal and professional stance. I am not against primaries. I think they're fine. I think having the voters choose our elected leaders, in every step of the way, nominations and in the fall is perfectly acceptable. And one of the reasons why I want the June primary to stay where it is, because it gives us enough time from the June primary to the November election to properly have a primary and then recover from that. And we've seen that all over the case. That being said, and I'm also neutral in primaries. I do not take a side on primaries. Look, I'm a Democrat. That's how New York runs its elections. We have one Democrat commissioner, one Republican commissioner. I think it's assumed that I'm going to back all Democratic candidates in the general election. And I will say that, my vote, I won't ever tell you what my vote is because my vote is always secret, just as your vote is always secret. But, I have a D next to my name. I don't run away from that. But in primaries, I stay neutral because I want both sides to be able to come to me, whether they're my good friends or people I'm not really fond of. But I want them to be able to come to me in a professional capacity to give them every opportunity to get on the ballot. So I stay neutral in all primaries. But designating petitions is how primaries form, because what then happens is two people from the same party running in the same subdivision turning two petitions for the same race, or they both have a valid number of signatures. This creates a contest at the primary level. In fact, if you look at the designated petitions that come to your door starting on Tuesday, every petition has the date on there for the primary, not for the general election, because it is assumed that there could be a primary in every race, whether somebody has decided to run that or not. So this is how the primaries form. So if two people from the same division, political subdivision, sorry, a little tired today. The two people from the same political subdivision actually turn in valid petitions, then the way that contest is resolved is at the primary election this year on June 23rd. So, and you may notice that when people come to your door, they're going to have multiple sheets of petitions. That's because these are people that are running in different races. So a carrier this year may have anywhere from 7, 8, or 9 sheets asking you to sign multiple sheets. That's allowed. In fact, it's recommended because these are the Democrats or Republicans or conservatives or working families in your area running for election. For example, you'll have one sheet for the congressional race, one sheet for the county court judge race, one sheet for the New York Senate race, one sheet for the New York Assembly race. These are all people representing you, but they're in different political subdivisions, so they have to have different sheets. You will also have one sheet for your city or town races that are going on. So the city of Syracuse or has a common council at large and a commissioner of education thing, and the town, a lot of towns have races this year because we moved them to the even years. You're going to have one sheet for your county ledge race. So that's 6, right? Also, people that are representing the county committee for your party are passing petitions this year. So they need a sheet for themselves because even though they are on the county committee, they have to pass sheets because technically those are elected offices. So that's your 7th sheet. And then in some towns, Salina and Camillus on the Republican side, they have ward designations. So they have people running this year that are running not townwide, but within a ward system. They will have another sheet. And then if they're a village, if you live inside of a village, specifically the village of Liverpool, this year, Liverpool, Fayetteville, Baldwinsville, they have November elections, but they will have a sheet. And so if you're in the village of Liverpool, you'll have a sheet for your ward counselor and your Liverpool Village counselor and your Salina town supervisor, in addition to all the other sheets that I showed you. So it could be up to 9 sheets. It's a lot of sheets for a lot of people. So take pity on them. If you are a Democrat, Republican, and most of these contests are not contested at the primary level, all you're doing is giving yourself a choice at the November election. So consider helping us out, because there is a lot of signatures required just to get people on the ballot in New York. The designating petition runs from February 24th to April 2nd, and it's filed March 30th to April 6th. You may notice that the last day to pass is less than the last day to file. Usually it's the same day. Usually it's a filing period is Monday through Thursday, but Thursday is a holiday, and that I believe it's a Jewish religious holiday. Then when that happens, we allow people to file on the following Monday or the Friday or whatever time that's in between there. So you can't pass petitions after April 2nd, but you can file on April 6th. But most people are going to be filing on that March 30th first deadline. So that's designating petitions, and that's starting on Tuesday. There are other ways on the ballot. I talked to you last week about the state conventions, and that was one way on the ballot. There are also some towns that do caucuses for their town offices, but not petitions. It doesn't matter for Congress, state Senate. They still have to get petitions inside those towns if they're running and those towns are in their subdivision. But some town offices run on what's called caucuses, which means that they will determine their candidates at a later date by June 30th or something like that this year. So there's that way on the ballot. There's also independent nominating petitions. That's if you don't want to run on a party line. That runs April to May. Now, party lines in New York are Democrat, Republican, working families, and conservative. So if you don't want to run on a party line, or you want a second line in addition to your party line, the independent nominating petitions are later. And we'll talk about those in April when they start. And then the last thing that gets you on the ballot in New York in a normal way is judicial nominating conventions for Supreme Court. Those happen in August. So these ways of getting on the ballot, the state conventions, the caucuses, the designating petitions, the independent nominating petitions, and the judicial nomination in August, all of those things have to happen to make our general election in November fully stacked and ready to make a ballot. So there's a lot of things that go on into that. I like it to a weave. We are weaving all these things together to make a beautiful scarf of our election. And that is, those are the other ways that you can get on the ballot. Now, what's coming up at the Board of Elections this week? I think we're going to get a lot of registrations. We basically had a week off of the DMV registrations from last week's AVR conversion. We are being promised that's going to start coming this week. That does seem like a lot. We usually process at our board anywhere from 150 regular registrations and 400 change of addresses from the DMV every week. So we should get 2 weeks worth of those starting on Monday. We'll see how that goes. So we expect to be pretty busy with registrations over the next week. We're also continuing to make petitions for people who want to get on the ballot for the designating petitions. If you're somebody who's thinking about running for office, but you don't know how to make a petition, we're happy to walk you through the process or do it ourselves if we have time. There's usually about a 48-hour window on that because it takes time to proof it, make sure that everything that we're doing goes out the door. The Democratic side will help Democrats and working families. The Republican side helps out the Republicans and conservatives to make sure that everybody is doing things properly. So if you're interested, give us a call. My weekly wonk last week, I did part 4 of my towns that nominate Democrats by petition, which starts on Tuesday. And I did the town of Onondaga. What a wonderful weekly wonk that was. It was very relevant to me about that town. A town that is seen as a borderline town. But if you look deep into the numbers, it's not that it's just like, everybody in the town doesn't know which way it's going to go. You see these polar opposites happening in that town by age, by geographic region, by party. It's an interesting, changing of that town. So check that out. I really liked that weekly walk. I'm hoping on Thursday I'll have part 5 of that series, and I'm going to be doing the town of Salina, home of the Salina sweep. Salina went blue last year all the way around, and they got to get back up and run again this year. So the town of Salina is an interesting town because it also has only one of 2 towns that have some of their town offices run in wards, or they're not running town-wide, but they're running in geographic distinctions. My trivia question last week was how many towns voted for Hochul and Knoll. The previous week I did how many towns voted for Mannion and Harris in 24. So this time I did Hochul and Knoll in 22. Well, this is different than in 24. In 24, every town voted for both, either both Mannion and Harris, or both Trump and was it Brandon Williams? Is that who he beat in 24? Yeah, he was. Brandon Williams. I already forgot him. 2-year congressman. But so every town made a distinction. But in this case, that's not the case. Many of them did. So Knoll and Hochul both won Syracuse, Camillus, DeWitt, Geddes, Manlius, Salinas, Skaneateles, and Skaneateles. But they split 3 different towns. Clay, Onondaga, and Spafford. And these are the towns that we really have been saying, wow, especially Clay and Onondaga, they're really on a knife's edge right now. So it's interesting that in 22, we already started seeing this happen, where they voted for Fran Knoll, but for Lee Zeldin as well. Interesting vote splitting happening there. And then, of course, both of the Knoll and Hochul lost Cicero, Elbridge, Fabius, Lafayette, Lysander, Marcellus, Otisco, Pompey, Tully, and Van Buren. So a lot more even split in the towns in 22, which is a gubernatorial, which is this year as well. So you can see how things react a little differently to the presidential and in the presidential elections than it does with a gubernatorial. Of course, 22 was seen as one of the worst gubernatorial years for Democrats in a long time. So we'll see what 26 is going to be. Next week's question is, what are the county ledge districts who voted for Mannion and Harris in 24? And this is actually, I've put a lot of work into this one. And it's not something that you're going to be able to find out there readily, because the county ledge districts that people are running in right now got put in place in 2025. So I've had to map those districts on the election results of 24. And I think it's going to be interesting to you to see how many of those 17 county ledge districts voted for Mannion and Harris in 24. So check that out. And next week's Commissioner in the Car, I believe I will do a refutation of the SAVE Act. I just wanted to get to these petitions right now and leave the federal stuff for another podcast, one more week. Next Sunday, we'll be talking about the SAVE Act, why I believe it's a really bad idea, but also the problems it's going to cause. And we'll talk about the likelihood of it passing the Senate as well. But it is important for us to talk about, even if you don't believe it's going to pass the Senate, because it's we've seen weirder things happen with this Congress. And as the Republican Party, the National Republican Party, and in particular President Donald Trump get more and more desperate, we have seen them do more and more try to, it started with the redistricting, where they were doing midterm redistricting in red states, and that got counterbalanced by the midterm redistricting in blue states now. And we will see if that desperation falls to the SAVE Act, which has passed the House twice. But the first time it died in the Senate in 25, but we'll see if it dies in the Senate again in 26. All right, that's it. Thank you very much for having me, and you can always go to DustinZarni.com, like and subscribe, get an email notification anytime I post content or election news, and enjoy your week. Bye-bye.